Hello and welcome back to the BitBar. We've got a new restoration series we're kicking off today, and it's on this cabinet here in front of us. This is commonly referred to as a Capcom Big Blue. Capcom actually made a lot of these cabinets in several different versions. There's a great thread on KLOV, the Kill List of Video Games forum, that runs through a whole bunch of different variations, and I'll run through some pictures here of some of the different cabinets that they did. But this kicked off, I believe, with the first cabinet that they put, that they used for one of the classic fighting games, which is Street Fighter II Championship Edition. It sort of kind of became kind of the quintessential Capcom fighting cabinet, right? So they had tons of different games came in here, a lot of fighters. X-Men versus Street Fighter was in here, Marvel versus Capcom. These are definitely like 90s fighters, like mid 90s fighters. The Street Fighter Alpha and EX series, Darkstalkers, whole bunch of different fighting games. And they typically, aside from one or two notable differences, I think Punisher came in a cabinet much like this one. Actually, I think it was like the first Championship Edition version, with the notable exception that it was black, so it was like a big black instead of a big blue. But most of the rest of them, or I believe all of the rest of them, actually came in this blue laminate color. And it's a great cabinet. It's big. It definitely deserves the name, the big and the Big Blue name there. Just to give you an idea, some of you who know me or have met me know I'm actually pretty tall. I'm 6'7". So to put that in perspective, I have to look up at the top of this cabinet, even at 6'7" here. So it's tall. It's actually I think it comes in at like 73.5 inches, this cabinet, and I don't have it on leg levelers right now. So actually with leg levelers, that could easily be a 7-foot tall cabinet. And it is wide too. This is actually sort of the medium control panel. The earlier ones have with the Championship Edition came in. They're actually the control panel is inside the width of the cabinet, so it doesn't stick out like the little wings that this one has. And this would be like sort of the medium, the slightly later version. And then they have one that's yet wider, where the design, the shape of this is very similar, but it sticks out a little bit further so that it can accommodate 3 and 4 players actually playing the same cabinet at the same time. The Q sound, maybe that's worth mentioning real quick. So the first cabinets didn't have this as an option. The later ones, I believe, because the first ones, Championship Edition, that's a CPS-1 board. So the CPS-2 introduced this virtual audio Q sound thing. And Q sound isn't actually strictly speaking, an arcade thing. It's really just it's a sort of a way to mix audio. And the effect is through just a 2-channel setup, so just a standard stereo setup. If the audio has been mastered, and I might get this wrong, but this is generally how I understand it. If the audio has been mastered to work with this Q sound, you sort of get this pseudo 3D effect with the sound. Other than that, the hardware, there's really nothing special about it. The hardware, all it is like I said, a pair of 2-channel speakers, so just stereo speakers, and there's an audio amp. We can actually, let's go ahead and pull around back and take a look at the audio amp real quick. So there's this audio amp here that Capcom had made for these cabinets, but ultimately there's nothing really all that special about this audio amp. I mean, it's nice to have the original hardware in here, but ultimately it really is just a regular amp. And what it does is it takes these RCA inputs that come off of the CPS2 boards, and then that just loops around and then goes into this amp right here, and then this has output here, which then this goes up to the speakers there in the top of the cabinet. That's just the power in here. So yeah, so I mean it's a great little piece of hardware here. The fact that it's original, but yeah, I mean if you for example if you had one of these cabinets and you wanted to put or utilize that Q sound, you could just take the RCA out of the PCBs from the CPS2 PCBs and then run those through any kind of amp that you can put in these RCAs into, and then hook up the speakers to that amp to get the sound out. So it's a pretty cool cabinet overall, and I needed to do a kind of a real light restoration on this. So I'm not sure what this one started as, but I'm going to convert it into a Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, since that's a great sort of quintessential fighting game, and it'll be running on the original CPS2 hardware. I have done a little bit of work on it. I pulled the control panel apart, just took the sticks off the joysticks, got rid of the control panel overlay that was on it, and remove the buttons, and I'm going to deal with cleaning up the wiring. I'll show you a picture of what the wiring looks like. It's a rat's nest. You know, it's funny, operators, we always wonder as collectors, like, why the heck operators do things they do to these cabinets, but ultimately, you know, they're just trying to make a buck. These things are money-making machines for them, so they don't really care. You know, as long as it works, that's all that really matters. So yeah, so I'm going to start working on, I'm going to clean up the harness here. I've got, like I said, I've got it pulled. So it's marked, I just marked each of the locations as I pulled it off and laid it on the floor here. So I'm going to clean that up and make that a lot better. But there's this great mass in the middle that was just a pain. And you know, it's going to be a pain to troubleshoot anything if the harness ends up having any problems, or, you know, who knows. But we're going to get that cleaned up. I hate that. So what I'm going to do is just run the cabinet through kind of a bath here, clean it up, and talk a little bit about what the big plans are for it. Main thing is, like I said, this is going to be like a light restoration. First off, the cabinet's in generally really good shape. I don't think it needs a major restoration. It has a couple little things which are kind of a bummer, but you know, things are expected. Someone did put a lock bar on it at some point, so I'm gonna at least cap this and make that look a bit nicer than that. And then, unfortunately, it does have one crack, which is not, unfortunately, all that uncommon. Again, just with these things being so big, but yeah, there's a crack in the wood up here. But I'm not, you know, I'm going to live with that. That's, to me, that's, if I were going crazy doing a restoration on this thing, obviously I would have to fix that. But to fix this one crack, I'd have to re-laminate this entire side, or re-vinyl this entire side. And that's just not where I want to go with this cabinet. It's just not worth it to me. However, I am going to do some wood repair on the control panel, because the control panel was slightly damaged when I got it. It's not too terrible. It's not bad enough that I want to cut a whole brand new one. But the back edge here is pretty chewed up. I'm not sure, just to see if you can see that. Yeah, so the back edge here is pretty chewed up, so I want to clean that up. I'm just going to get rid of all this particle board that's flaking off here, and probably do a little Bondo fill, or sorry, a filler fill on that, and just clean that edge up a little bit. Same thing with this corner right here. So really, that's just the only two major things I need to do, and then probably slap some new T-molding on it just to clean it up. And then I've got new buttons going into it, a new control panel overlay, which is one of the Street Fighter 2 series overlays. I've actually got it right here. So I think that they introduced this control panel overlay with Street Fighter 2, the new challengers. So it's the globe overlay, which I think looks super awesome. Yeah, and then I've got decals for the controls that'll go on here. So for each side, these are adhesive decals that'll go on top of this overlay here. And then it'll be on top of this, it'll be a piece of plexiglass. So I'll have to cut that to shape and then route out the actual shape, the literal shape of the control panel, following all these contours here. And then as well as the holes here for the joysticks and the buttons as well. I'll have to route those out of the plexiglass overlay. So that'll be a fun little project. But for today, we're going to clean up. Oh, actually, I've got one other thing. A piece of artwork for it. I have one of the super tall marquees. You can see that. I mean, look at like a normal marquee. Like, right. So there's a standard marquee that fits on a generally normal-ish size arcade cabinet, and then you see the size of this one. It is quite a bit bigger. Yeah, and this guy goes up here. I'll need to put in some new light bulbs and whatnot, and this bracket goes over the top of it. Basically, it sits up there like that. So yeah, this will go on too once I get this baby all cleaned up. All right, I'm going to start with wiping down the outsides. Yeah, it's just using simple green here. It's funny, in the citrus flavor, one of the regular flavor is simple green. I don't even know what that smell is supposed to be. It's not really pine. It's just the smell of simple green. When I was a kid, one of my schools that I went to, they used the green stuff. And I remember smelling that, like walking into the bathrooms at that school, and just maybe I just had a natural aversion to school or something, but I associate that smell with that memory. Memory is very, very tied to smell. So whenever I smell it, I always think of that school, and I don't really care for. I don't have a problem with the I guess I should say, I don't really have a problem with the regular simple green. I just really prefer the citrus stuff. And this stuff's great. Actually, if you go to you buy it by the bottle like this, but you can also get these gallon jugs of it. I think I got this at like Home Depot or something. But that's really nice, especially if you're using a fair amount of it. And this is the go-to stuff for arcade collectors to clean their cabinets. So having a fair amount of it on hand is a good plan. So really, we're just cleaning off years of muck and gunk that's built up on the sides of these guys. But simple green to the rescue. Anyway, so that's pretty well cleaned up now. Vacuumed up. So I'm actually gonna wipe this guy down real quick too. And what I'm gonna do here is, obviously you don't want to spray the paper directly. First off, you might damage the paper. Second off, you'll end up with little splots all over it, so you don't want that. You want to keep it nice and smooth. So, lightly mist this guy here with some simple green, and I'm just gonna gently kind of wipe it off. Done. I'm going to throw this guy back on here backwards to the way it was. It's interesting, the little bezel here, it doesn't actually go like Donkey Kong, like when you put the bezel on the monitor, it actually kind of touches the front of the monitor and wraps around the front. As you can see, it's way too big to do that. This one actually sits just around the backside. It hides the, sort of the guts of the tube, or the whole monitor behind it, but it doesn't cover like the metal frame here around the edges. I've actually kind of got an idea for maybe doing something to hide that just a little bit more, just so you don't see these silver edges around the edge of the monitor. It's not the way the factory did it, but I mean, this is nice and clean, and obviously, once the wood bezel, which goes in front of that, is in place, you really can't see anything back into the game around the edges. Like back here, you're not going to be able to see hardly any of that. And the glass, once that goes over the top, I actually had to order a new glass. I'll talk about that a little bit when we get into assembly pretty soon here. But yeah, so once the glass is there, you really won't be able to see hardly any of this stuff. So on top of this wooden bezel here, what I did is I went and got some that kind of thick, not real super thick, but just some black poster board. I just cut this out by hand, and this will go further on top to hide that wooden edge there. So that's roughly what's going to look like, and then the glass will go on top. So one last little thing I want to take care of today, and that's cleaning up this horrible rat's nest of control panel wiring. And that's, to me, this is also kind of like part of the cleaning process, is cleaning stuff like this mess up. And they just, when they pulled it in, they just wound all this wire and balled it all up. Well, the kick harness can be separated out. You could do this much, much cleaner, and that's all we're going to do here. So it's not going to be, it's not at all difficult. You just need to trace the wires back, like I said. So what I did is before I pulled all these switches off and the wiring off, I went through and labeled each one. So that's player 2 start, and that's going to be that switch. That way I don't have to, fight with it later and then retrace all these things and look at the wiring diagrams. It's a simple, easy step you can do beforehand. So yeah, I'm going to get to going ahead and cleaning up this rat's nest. with that done, what we've got left here is we've got our kick harness. And I've not reattached the grounds. I actually had to trim off where those where the grounds were tied back into the main harness. But that's okay. I want to make sure that I've got the layout sorted out first, just for the signals that actually goes back to the board, before I actually worry about the little ground daisy chain. And I'll tie this back in once I see where this is going to go. So yeah, so the kick harness turned out great, much cleaner now. I'll be able to trace things back if I need to, if I run into any problems. And then the main harness. And the main harness, I've got it split up. I did the same thing with the kick harness. I split it up into player 1 and player 2, since those are going to go to obviously different parts of the control panel. That way, it'll be a lot easier to keep this stuff organized. It's still a little frayed and frazzled here, and I may decide to trim some of these back or clean these up a little bit more. But for now, this is ridiculously better than it was before. And now I can kind of see what I'm working with harness-wise. And yeah. So thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Appreciate the likes. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in here on YouTube. And I typically respond to pretty much anything that goes in there, just if you've got questions. Want to thank all the new subscribers. I know a lot of you guys came over from John's Arcade, my buddy John. I was on one of his videos for the big Fun Spot tournament we're going to. That's actually coming up next week, so it's pretty exciting. But yeah, I want to thank all you guys for joining me on this channel, and hopefully, we can come up with some stuff that you find interesting to watch. So thanks again for subscribing, and we'll talk to you soon.